Hello. Oh, there I am. Hi again, everybody. Dana Wildeboer from Mass Challenge here. Thanks again for being part of today's marketing and branding track at Austin Startup Week. I'm going to introduce our first speaker, who is Bobby Umar, the CEO at DYBP, Discover Your Personal Brand. Today, he'll be talking to us about storytelling for thought leaders, helping your diversity and inclusion stories come to life. When it comes to diversity and inclusion, two of the biggest challenges for senior organization leaders include sharing your personal stories on the D&I track in an authentic way, and being vulnerable and powerful, and using your vulnerability and your power as a way to inspire. The lack of interpersonal communication and storytelling in the workplace can result in a lack of belonging and low motivation. The course of content is designed to solve these challenges through the following techniques, strategies, and content elements, extracting your diversity, equity, and inclusion story from your experiences. So I'd like to welcome Bobby to the screen right now. Hey, Bobby.
Hello, how are you?
I'm great, thanks. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, thanks. I'm very excited. Thank you for that great intro, and I'm looking forward to sharing as much information with this group as I can.
Awesome. Well, the show's yours. I can't wait to hear your talk.
Awesome. So can we get the slides up? There we go. Brilliant. Okay, great. So let me just make sure I'm doing this properly here. So today we're going to talk about storytelling, and really it's really about empowering the voices, particularly for diversity inclusion, which is something that's important to me. So let me just make sure we get, there we go. Okay, so it's working. So I want to maximize this as much as possible. Okay, there. So people can see the slides now. There we go. All right, so let's get going here. Oh, sorry, just give me a second. It's just not responding. And again, if you have questions as we do go through this, that'll be great. I'd love to kind of hear what your questions are. So, and I'm not seeing it's change. I don't see it changing in the actual. The slides aren't changing. Okay, they are now. Okay, good. Okay, good. So how can you use the knowledge today that we're going to talk about? Well, stories are really about helping people, compelling people to change how they feel, how they think, how they act, and the way they behave. And I want to start off actually by asking people, what does storytelling mean to you? So if you want to actually post in the comments, what does it mean to you, like in terms of when you think of storytelling? I'd love to kind of hear kind of what your thoughts are on the importance of storytelling and what it actually, how you feel about it, because I think that's going to be an important piece as we talk about it. A lot of people will say storytelling, means a way to connect with people, to share their humanity, to help bridge understanding amongst people. And again, this is something that most CEOs, leaders, and business people have to learn how to do, whether they're at a presentation or whether they're just having a meeting or whether they're just sharing results of the last month or last quarter. So that's why storytelling is so important. Excuse me. So, and if there are comments, again, I'd love to be able to see what those comments are because I want to be able to respond to them. But if not, that's no problem. I'll just keep going. And storytelling is something that we do everywhere we go. So you're going to see storytelling whether you're on stage, whether you're sharing a text post, whether you're putting together a summary for your LinkedIn profile, whether you're creating video content, or whether you're networking live and in person. And who's this training for? Well, this is really for you if you want to create greater connection with your audience, your team, or your followers through any medium, empowering the unique and diverse voices in your organization. You want to use the knowledge, story, and experience around diversity, inclusion, and equity to create breakthroughs in your organization or career. You want to enhance your online presence. You want to be a thought leader, executive entrepreneur. You want to speak, write, coach, or consult more. Or you just want to create better branded and aligned DEI content. So the next 45 minutes, I'm going to talk about why storytelling, why diversity and inclusion, to learn some of your challenges, talk about thought leadership branding, share some storytelling strategies and tactics. I'll give a case study I actually have developed to break it down an effective story. I'll actually have a special invite for more storytelling deep dives with me, and then I'll share some advanced storytelling tactics before we end up with Q&A if we have time for that. So, and my promise to you today is to give you insights, strategies, and tactics to help you build more powerful stories and stronger thought leadership, personal brand with your content. So why am I doing this? Well, my why statement is there are lost, stuck, unfulfilled leaders everywhere. And what that means is everywhere I go, I meet people who feel lost in their career, stuck in their jobs, or unfulfilled in their relationships or their work. And so all the work I'm doing across the board aligns with this why statement. A little bit about myself. I'm a professional speaker with over 1,000 talks around the world. I'm a 5-time TEDx speaker. I've written books. I'm an Inc. Magazine top 100 leadership speaker. I'm also a social media influencer with over 500,000 followers. And when I first went on TEDx for my 5 TEDx talks, they asked me, Bobby, what is your brand? What are you all about? What's your story? And the thing I came up with was the power of connection. And so a lot of what I do when it comes to storytelling, personal brand, relationship building is all about the power of connection. And my career path has been kind of diverse. I started out as an engineer. I ran a musical theater company. I then went into brand marketing after my MBA. I was in a sketch comedy troupe, and then I started my 2 businesses. But ultimately, it's a very diverse story of thought leadership, personal branding, and connection at the core of what I do. So the big questions today we're going to cover is why storytelling is so important. How do I improve my stories? How can I leverage DEY storytelling for my organization and my own personal brand? So let's start with the first question, which is what are your storytelling challenges and objectives? Again, this is something where, if you are able to share your thoughts or insights, I'd love to hear from you. What are some of your storytelling challenges and insight as challenges and objectives? Obviously, people have different challenges here and there. And so I kind of want to get a sense of, where your struggles are. And again, if we can't see the comments, that's fine. I'll just kind of share what some people typically would say on these types of things. But, one of the most common things that I've seen with storytelling challenges is they don't know really how to frame or structure the story in the right way. They don't know how to actually leverage it for their personal brand and how it works in the workplace, or they don't know how to tell a really great story. They don't know the tactics behind it. Or the biggest problem is mindset. A lot of people are like, well, I'm not sure if my story has any value or people want to hear my story. And that's actually just more of a flawed mindset, because most of us we all have stories we can tell that are going to be very helpful to us as well as the people around us. It's going to sell you. It's going to sell your business. It's going to sell your team. It's going to sell your organization. And it's going to humanize you and connect you on a more powerful level than you ever realized. So if we go into storytelling, storytelling allows us to show that we are still good people because we're showing some authenticity, vulnerability, and imperfections. And the science is also very strong about storytelling. We have dopamine, which is released when experiencing an emotionally charged event. And what happens is when you tell a story, it makes the event easier to remember and higher accuracy. So if you're talking about your business results, you're talking about your product, people remember that far more if you tell a story. And further to that, there's cortex activity, where when you process the facts, 2 areas are activated, and then the stories actually engage the motor and frontal cortex, which then creates longer lasting impressions, which again, as your brand, and as someone out there that wants to actually engage people, this is what you want. You want them to remember who you are. A quick story for you guys. So a long time ago, I met this beautiful young woman at a wedding, and she was really awesome. And we connected on things like musical theater and Star Trek and Monty Python, and and we wanted to get together, but we had a challenge because my family was very strict and conservative, and it was a bit of a culture clash. But after several years of making it happen and talking about values like love and respect and family, I was able to win my family over, and she was accepted into our family, and soon we had a beautiful brown wedding, and now we have beautiful beige babies, and everything's great. And one of the things I learned was that if there's love in the family and you speak to them on values that you can both understand, parents will come around. Now that's a very, very short story. That's only like 1 minute long, and I could probably go on and on about it. And that's a true story because it's my story. But storytelling tells you that it evokes imagery and emotion. You could probably imagine me talking to my parents about this. You can probably imagine me at this wedding celebrating 2 different cultures together. You can probably imagine what it's like to be a parent if one of you is a parent. I relate it to your own experience. You've probably been through something where there's a culture clash with mixed relationships. Maybe you know someone that has a mixed relationship. Maybe you had trouble with dealing with your parents. But ultimately, that story makes it very relatable. And when I tell a story, I'm telling you more than I'm saying. I'm sharing my values, my beliefs, my culture. Now, how do you structure a basic story? Well, you establish a setting. Here's the wedding. You build the plot, the parental crisis. You resolve the crisis. Now we're married. You describe the lessons learned in terms of love and values. You explain how me and the characters changed, and you give examples along the way. And ultimately, stories have to be quite simple. You can't make it really complicated because people like simpler stories the better. So whether you talk about nanotechnology or cryptocurrencies, you got to keep it super simple. And storytelling is important for your business or brand. I mean, business decisions are not based solely on logic. So you want to create that human experience. Numbers aren't memorable, stories are. We talked about the data and the science behind that. Stories engage our audience beyond the facts. So, the brain will process visual images more. So creating that visual idea in their head is really helpful. There's a strong marketing strategy. So story is the backbone of a strong marketing strategy. And human and profitable. Heartfelt storytelling is both human and profitable for your business or your brand. It's also a competitive advantage if you learn to do it really, really well. And it emotionally connects people and creates brand loyalty. And you can build business brand stories online anywhere. And these are all the different places. And my general take is that if everyone you target is there, your stories need to be there too. So if you're building a platform on Pinterest or Instagram or Snapchat or TikTok, and your audience is there, you got to build it. But my general thing is wherever you're building, please ensure you invest in LinkedIn. I'm a huge proponent and advocate for LinkedIn storytelling. In fact, LinkedIn just recently launched LinkedIn Stories, even more powerful for you to take that to the next level. So the other question that comes up is what is holding you back from storytelling effectively right now? Again, if you have comments or questions, like by all means, put them in the chat box. I could review them later because I would like to see them, and maybe the Austin organizers can maybe share a bit about that. But I want to hear what's holding you back. Typically, what holds people back is not having the framework, not understanding the proper value of what they bring to the table. They don't have the right tactics. They don't know how to actually leverage different platforms. Different mediums, whether they're scared of video or they're scared of text posts, like whatever it might be. But those are typically the things that strike people in terms of what holds them back. Now, if we talk about diversity, equity, inclusion, that's an important piece because we're looking at three different things, right? The diversity of people's perspectives, the inclusion of their voice in the culture, and the equity and having results from policy, practice, and position. And I'm a big advocate for diversity, equity, inclusion. And storytelling, here's where it comes into play. If you have proper diversity, inclusion, and equity, then what you have is a sense of belonging. So what you do is you start with telling stories around the different identities in the organization, whether you're at the top or at the bottom. Then you start talking and sharing about getting people to share ideas through storytelling, which then leads to a sense of conclusion. And once you do that, the stories will then create a sense of belonging. And that's actually the ultimate goal for any organization. Now, why DEI stories? Well, for the most part, connection. You want to create greater connection because that it translating across communication disconnects and biases, separates people and professional disciplines. So you want to actually create that connection with the different types of diverse people. You want to build awareness by telling stories that employees and clients really need to hear. It's a pathway to inclusion, which builds a clear call to action. And it's validating. Employees feel valued as an individual at work. So if you're a startup or your business is small and you're bringing people in, they want to feel valued. And again, ultimately, you want to create a sense of belonging. So the key takeaway is all your stories will greatly enhance the culture and impact of your organization. And our focus is for this training is twofold. One is to look at people who are senior leaders in the organization, as well as representing the people that are maybe lower in the organization. So ideally, we want to empower you to build confidence and capability to share your stories around diversity, equity, inclusion. But you also want to empower your employees and people you contract out to help them, encourage them to share their own stories so they get a sense of community and belonging and inclusivity. Before we dive in, though, further to storytelling, let's talk about the most important concept for leaders like you in today's digital age to master. That is thought leadership branding. So if you look at these people here, what do they stand for in a couple of words? Jay-Z's R&B and hip hop, Oprah's self-help and personal development, Gary Vaynerchuk's about hustle and entrepreneurship, Seth Godin's about marketing and tribes. What exactly is thought leadership? Well, every single one of you needs to build this, and here are the three criteria steps. Number one, you have to learn to build broad relationships and deep relationships. Number two, you have to create ideas and content. Oprah's writing books, Gary Vee's doing videos, Jay-Z's writing songs, Warren Buffett's writing financial investment reports. And you also have to master public speaking communication skills, work on your writing, work on your speaking, work on your storytelling, work on everything to build that communication asset. And anyone can develop all three. Most of us are good at one of these things. Some of us are good networkers, some of us are good content creators, some of us are good at just communicating. But ultimately, the more you build all three of these things, the more impact you have as a thought leader in your field. Now, why is thought leadership important for you as a startup? When you're seen as the expert with a solid reputation, you have a huge network, and you own the conversation, then opportunities come to you because you are memorable. You have the confidence to go after opportunities, and then ultimately connections. Customers, clients, partners, colleagues will follow you. I chose social media as my path for thought leadership, branding, and storytelling. And back in the day, in March 5th, 2011, that was the day of my first TEDx talk. I only had 200 followers on Twitter and 100 views on my YouTube channel. But since then, 475,000 followers on Twitter, 59,000 followers on LinkedIn, 6 million views on LinkedIn. I've been able to build a thought leadership brand. Has it helped me? Absolutely. I was named one of the top 100 leadership speakers alongside Richard Branson. I've done 5 TEDx talks. I was named one of the top 75 LinkedIn influential voices, and it's done me well. Now, some of you may say, well, what if I haven't done any thought leadership brand building? Well, it's okay. What I can tell you is that you have to be different, great, or first. So if you're not first, you can still be different, and you can still be great. And that's where your focus should be to build that thought leadership brand. So start now, start today. So, we talked about kind of the 3 main criteria steps, but I want to what we're going to talk about today is storytelling. But what you'll find, and we're going to talk about, content creation, but what you'll find is that storytelling helps all 3 areas. You're better at building relationships, you're better at content creation, you're better at communication. Storytelling helps all 3, which is fantastic. Now, I do another training on LinkedIn where I talk about how to put together a fantastic LinkedIn profile. And one of the things I talked about are these top 5 tips for leveraging storytelling. And what you can see is storytelling actually helps all four of my top 5 tips in terms of native video, long form posts, articles, and short form posts. So you can actually leverage storytelling with all that content. And now, because we're in the COVID world, we have to look at the opportunity, right? We're all working from home more. We're all transitioning, pivoting or perishing from our businesses or our startups or even our own jobs. There's diminishing trust in the global world. We have to break through that trust. And your online presence matters even more. So how do we break through that trust and break through the online presence and let people know what we're doing? That's where storytelling becomes a powerful tool for you. And if you want to build authentic connection, remember, people, customers, and businesses and all your current potential audience prefer to engage those they trust. How do you build trust? How do you build a stronger brand of authentic connection in the digital age? Well, the key is to involve them so they understand you, your product, your business, your story. They understand you. And LinkedIn, like I said, they've launched stories. And so here's my friend String Nguyen, who's doing LinkedIn stories. And I started doing LinkedIn stories just last week. And just like Instagram stories and Facebook stories, it's a great way to share who you are and really create some personalized human connection and relationships with people. Now, a lot of you might be saying, well, I'm kind of awkward about this. But again, if you want to create change, you have to embrace that change and create that change for yourself. And that's why I'm here, because I'm going to try and encourage you to do that and take that next step. Now, let's look at strategies and tactics. Let's review some of the most important elements of storytelling to master. So step number 1 is to immerse your audience in exactly where you are and what's going on. So they feel it. They feel completely involved in it. They start to visualize what's going on. You're asking them very potent questions. You're explaining the situation. But immersing them is really the key to getting them to invest in further engagement with who you are, what you're talking about. So instead of saying the plane was going down, like in this great shot from the movie Almost Famous, what they really said was, I'm flying high over to Tupelo, Mississippi with America's hottest band, and we're all about to die. And I remember the Rolling Stone editor saw this and said, ooh, this is great. That's what you want. You want to immerse them so they want to say, tell me more, tell me more. Number 2, you want to show, don't tell. So don't tell me the moon is shining. Show me the glint of light of broken glass, right? So let's show how this works. So there's a great, another movie, Jurassic Park 2, where Julianne Moore's on the glass and it's crinkling and it's starting to crack and she's overlooking a cliff. And the tension is there, and the drama is there, and the intrigue is there. But if you describe that and with your words and show that versus telling them, it creates greater intrigue. So, for example, losing my job was surprising, okay? Versus, I lost my job 1 year ago today. After 14 years, it came as a huge shock. I loved my work, my organization mission, and my colleagues. I felt I was great at what I did. So you really show, and you're starting to visualize what's going on. You're visualizing the box. You're visualizing them walking out. You're visualizing the feeling, the emotion. And that's where you start to get more of the show versus the tell. And there's different ways to make sure that you get the show, don't tell right. Telling is just for exposition and describing broad events. You tell people to speed up time. You mix showing and telling well. So if you say a character is angry, continue with concrete actions that show that they're angry in terms of what they do. And you can also cut filter words to show more. So instead of saying she saw that the door was locked, you say the door was locked, which creates more drama and intrigue. Number 3, tell a personal story. So, we know Brené Brown has great research on the power of vulnerability, and it actually helps you create far greater connection than anything else out there. And vulnerability is at the core of the center of meaningful human experiences. And that's why stories, again, are a great way for you to sell who you are and your brand, your products. So, I tell stories about my physical fitness journey. I tell stories from home. I tell stories on stage. And sometimes I tell stories where things screwed up. I was trying to do a video on LinkedIn a couple years ago, and it was upside down. I couldn't fix it, and I was kind of freaking out. So then I just, the hell with it, and I posted it, and I turned it into a story about tech fails and how to deal with it. And it got great traction. And a personal story is what we talk about, the hero's journey, right? There's the known of, the call to adventure, but you want to give people the unknown, right? The threshold, the transformation, the challenges, the revelation, the transformation, and getting to that return. That hero's journey is the piece that's going to get people to really invest in you and listening to who you are. So here's an example of a personal story that, so you could say, I have problems with body issue, versus saying, Daddy, aren't you going to take your shirt off? Said my 3-year-old boy. In the next terrifying 15 seconds, it felt like 15 hours. You see, I hadn't taken off my shirt in public for over 25 years. There was no way I would pass my body image issues to my son. So, and when you hear that, you want to hear the rest of the story. And this is a true story that I shared on LinkedIn a couple months ago. You can actually take a look for it. And I shared that about my body image issues. And, again, it got incredible traction. I think like 35,000 views, which is a lot for most of my stuff. My average views are like say 5,000. Now this one's hard to explain, but it's simple, sizzle, soulful steak. So the idea here is that years ago, a long time ago, previous generation, they would say, sell the sizzle, don't sell the steak, sell the sizzle. That's what they would say, sizzle. But the truth is, it's both. You have to have real meat and foundation behind what you're talking about versus just the sizzle or the bologna, as they might call it. So you want to do both, right? So you have to make your steak sizzle and generate excitement. And from the beginning of the whole thing to the end of the whole thing. And that sizzle comes, so for example, sizzle, this is a great story of here's the steak, but there's a certain story behind the soulfulness of this. It was the prep and the care and the due diligence and the emotion, the feeling. And now we have the delivery of the vegetables and the spices and all the different things they do, the sousance of stuff to make it just far more compelling and amazing. That's what you want to be able to create for people. And so there is sizzle, but there's also steak. So, for example, I had a transitional moment. Okay, there's a little bit of sizzle there, a little bit of steak, but not enough. Summer brought deep transition. After soulful healing, reflecting on my emotional wounds, and working with a coach, I came out stronger, focused, and ready for the next step. There's sizzle there with keywords like healing and stronger and focused, but there's also soulful steak with the emotional wounds and the deep transition. And number 5, you want to become a great storyteller, you have to practice, rehearse, hone your craft. This sword maker has made 10,000 swords, and he gets better and better each time. And just like you, as you tell stories, you have to work on your craft. No one's good in the beginning. Everyone was born a bad speaker. And so, as Bruce Lee says, I fear not the man who's practiced 10,000 kicks once, but I fear the man who's practiced one kick 10,000 times. And I can tell you from my own story, when I first started speaking 15 years ago, my first kind of area of expertise was networking. And I told networking stories. And some of the stories I've told, I still tell today, and I've probably told those stories 1,000 times. And now I'm extremely good at that one, and I don't even need to practice. I just do it. So the top 5 tips for better storytelling: immerse your audience in your story, show, don't tell, tell a personal story, structure simple, sizzle, and soulful steak, and then practice, rehearse, and hone your craft. So what you want to do is you want to build a database of stories, practice, and impact. Now, let's say that you have mastered storytelling, How would that feel? What would your life look like right now, and how would your organization benefit? These are key questions that you should really think about. It probably would feel empowering. Your life would look like it would have more clarity, focus, and impact. Your organization would benefit because there'd be greater connection and inclusion in the organization. That's why storytelling is so great. So you should build your stories now. Like if there's anything I want you to do after this session, I want you to think about your top 5 to 10 stories. Like put together a list of your top 5 to 10 work stories, personal stories, people stories. Write them down. This is an action item. Write them down for yourself right now or later after this. But please make sure you do that. That's something I'd love for you to do. Because your story is your brand, and your brand is your story. And again, my organization is about personal branding. So I want to share a little bit about this because when I look at personal branding and I look at all the stories and work I've done in the last 10+ years, we've learned that every individual organization wants 3 things. Number one, they want more focus, more clarity, direction, purpose with their work and their life. Number two, they want more alignment, so more meanings, values, activation, passion, fulfillment, and happiness and joy. And number three, they want more impact, some more achievement, stories, results, story, and legacy. And your personal brand journey covers 3 areas, which is discover, design, deliver. So we put together a personal brand model, and this applies to any one of you, whether it's your business, for your startup, or for you as an individual. But most of us, you discover your brand to dive deep into self-analysis, you design your brand, and you deliver. And the issue that I've seen with all the people I've worked with is that 90% of you are in the design phase. You're developing, you're strategizing, you come up with a tactic, you're planning, you're identifying, you're trying to figure it out, you're working with a few people, you're working with an agency. But when you launch, you don't have the results you want, and maybe you're 40, 50, 60% effective. What happens, you don't do the work. You don't dive in deep and discover and self-analyze and get feedback from your audience and really understand what it is about your brand, that how you're perceived. And that takes like 20+ hours. But when you do that work, then the design phase becomes more 85, 95, 99% aligned and more successful. So I encourage everyone to think about that. And we offer workshops too on branding, storytelling, and behavioral styles and things like that, along with other things. And we actually launched a personal branding course online with 25 videos, 30+ exercises, 20 hours of homework. If you're interested, the new launch price there, you can actually check it out or message me anytime. Because again, your brand is your story, and we want to create a branded story around who you are and what it's all about. Now, what have I done specifically to create greater engagement through storytelling? Well, I'll tell you a quick story about my wife who needed my help. So my wife lost her job, and she started freelancing as a copywriter and editor. It was going slow, and I said, look, you should share your story. She's like, oh, I'm not sure. And I begged her, like the New Year came, I was like, tell a New Year's story. People like New Year's resolutions. Great story, great hook. She refused. 6 months went by, and I was like, honey, please, for the love of Pete, it's a year anniversary. Tell the story about losing your job and what you went through. And she put together a story. She said, okay, fine, put together a story. I looked at it. I was like, you know what? Sorry, I'm going to give you some feedback. This is too salesy. You've got to be more vulnerable. She's like, oh, I don't want to tell people that I lost my job and I'm a loser. I'm like, no, just don't worry about that. Just tell people what happened. Don't diss the company. Don't say you're a loser. Just tell what happened, how you felt, and what happened. And I coached her on the entire process, and we came up with something that I thought was amazing, but I didn't know it was going to do so well as it did. And I'll read it to you. I lost my job 1 year ago today. After 14 years, it came as a shock. I love my work, my organization's mission, and my colleagues. I thought I was great at what I did. Honestly, I still feel a little blue when I think about it. But any transition, even the ones we don't want or plan, can be the beginning of something new. After a healing summer with family, I had to come to terms with the next phase of my career. I decided to become a freelance copywriter and editor. Writing has always been my strength. When I reached out to a few contacts, I was delighted to find diverse, interesting projects. I've now served clients in hospitality, mining, medicine, the arts, athletics, technology, and real estate. My clients have been so gracious and lovely. Some recent projects have included editing a novel, writing PR crisis copy, writing a gift catalog, translating French documents, and live tweeting operas. But I still need to reach out to grow my business. That's why this is my first ever LinkedIn post. Please let me know if you or someone in your network needs my help. My website link is in the comments. Thanks to you, I will now remember today as a celebration of this new chapter. Has anyone been through something similar? I would love to hear a story too. So, what do we do here? Well, the first line, lost my job 1 year ago, we immerse the audience in exactly what's going on, creating drama. The first 2 lines of any post, whether it's LinkedIn or anywhere else, are critical because that's what they see on your phone. The first 2 lines before they say click see more and they see the rest. Show versus tell and being vulnerable were the next parts here. We threw in the hero's journey and the soulful stake as well. We talked about how you change as a person. Made it very personal and authentic. And then later on, We showed rising action, what was going on. We shared the brand story where she shows people who she is and what she can do for people, which is great. We even added a new conflict. I still need to grow my business. Made it relatable. My first ever LinkedIn post. A lot of people totally feel that, right? Because they've never been through that. There's a call to action, which makes it clear in terms of what she wants you to do and how and asking for help. And then, of course, gratitude always makes people feel more connected on a human level. And then an invite to share your own story. Now, the results were phenomenal, better than I ever thought. And one of the things interesting is that coaching the process was what allowed her to have such incredible results, because everyone needs a coach, but coaching creates focus, accountability, and 10x your results. So what happened was 350 people on LinkedIn shared this post on their own LinkedIn post because they loved it so much. 250,000 views, 100 plus leads for her business, 3.5 million impressions. And I gotta say, I'm jealous because this is better than anything I ever had myself. So it was just so good. I think it's because she's an incredible writer, and combine that with my support and coaching, she was able to get incredible results. And after today's session, I'm going to invite you to develop your stories further and join me for a private, deeper training plus access to an exclusive Facebook group. Because if you could enhance your stories, you could do a lot of things. One, you'll stand out among your competitors and improve loyalty. You'll demonstrate your expertise and build thought leadership. You'll create conversations that lead to connection, future conversations, and transactions. You'll enhance team meetings, presentations, and engagement. And you'll improve your pitching, product development, marketing, culture, and talent, whether it's live/recorded or in person online. It doesn't matter whether you're in person or recorded, you'll be able to do this in a much better way. So one of the things I'm doing is a storytelling bootcamp for all of you guys. It's an intimate 2-hour deep dive workshop for 6 to 10 people only, focusing on personally developing your top 1, 2, or 3 stories. There's also a storytelling mastery group for graduates with lifetime access. And I'll walk you through my 2 frameworks for personal brand stories and creating stories that inspire action. So here's an example. So my framework for diverse stories, the personal brand framework. Number 1, audience. Who are you speaking to? Number 2, objective. Why are you sharing the story? Number 3, your feelings. So how are they feeling? What are their pain points and bliss points? We'll focus on that. Number 4, what's the call to action? What do you want them who are listening to your story to learn, believe, feel, or act on after you share your story? And then step 2, the diverse story framework. Number 1, you find a personal story, and ideally you want to find at least 3. You give people data and statistics, evidence behind the story. Number 3, you tell them what you did, the action you took, how you changed, how you felt before and after, the lessons learned, and then your final message, which you have to keep to really one main message, one phase. And these are the 2 frameworks that I would take you through, but it's here for you as well right now if you want to understand what are the frameworks to use for better stories. And again, my normal price for bootcamp is $497. Today it's $297. That's 2 hours of deep diving plus the Facebook group. I'm also going to add for anyone that's on this presentation 2 live coaching calls in addition to that. And I invite you to join me at bit.ly/storytelling with Bobby. That said, here are some bonus tips on how storytelling diversity can also help you. So how to empower your diverse employees' diverse voices? Well, number 1, invite every voice, right? So people shine when thrust to the forefront. Number 2, you want to ensure everyone feels like they belong, right? We talked about the inclusion piece, right? So true belonging means every individual voice is heard. So you have to go out to them and talk to them and make sure they have their voice heard. You amplify diversity of thought and experience. Without it, nothing will change. You got to go beyond your comfort zone, right? We talked earlier about creating videos and being vulnerable, right? Break through the ceiling of your own set limiting beliefs to help others break through theirs. Some more tips for you. When you're storytelling, your top 5 tips with networking with stories. When you become a better storyteller, you ask better opening questions. You set your emotional vibe to curious about who people are. You focus on the relationship before the transaction. You can describe your work like a story. And you create stories even around the events and tools, like your example, your business card. One of my colleagues, he's a magician, but he's a professional speaker, but he has a business card that's a playing card. And he uses that story to let people know what he's all about and what he does. So you can create stories around everything. Remember we talked about 5 to 10 stories around every part of your life? You can do this. So you know your stories to help people engage in other people's stories. And then if you want to do a TEDx talk, which I'm sure many people do, some tips here. Tell the story your way, your style. It's not about you, it's about the audience. You have to understand the context of the event in terms of how you're sharing ideas and the value that people want. You got to stick to the clock, otherwise they get mad at you. And if it's not personal, it's not worthwhile. So you want to make sure there's a personal story to whatever your startup topic is all about. use the tools you have. Whether you use PowerPoint, a flip chart. Bill Gates did a TED talk where he had a jar of mosquitoes. He talked about malaria. He said these guys have all malaria, and then he let go of the jar into the audience. And they're like, "Oh my god!" And what happened was that you're like, "Don't worry, you're all immune. You're all vaccinated. Everyone's fine. So there's no worries about these mosquitoes." But it's a very powerful visual tool to make the point. There's also an important thing when you talk is to end with inspiration, right? Begin with the end in mind. What's the call to action you want people to do? I have a call to action for you guys. I want you to invest in storytelling, right? So that's my call to action. But you want to have a question or a quote or memorize close. Steve Jobs said, "Bite that apple." You want to end both you and the audience on a high. Nancy Duarte did this great TED talk where she looked at inspirational arcs in speeches where Martin Luther King talked about the "I Have a Dream" speech, and Steve Jobs talked about the first iPhone, and they have the same kind of inspirational arc where they talked about what is, what could be, and the new bliss or call to action to get there. So, Martin Luther King says, right now, children around the world are divisive. There's fighting. We're fighting with each other. I have a dream that children of all ages, creeds, and colors are holding hands, and here's how we're going to get there. And that's what he did. And Steve Jobs did the same thing. Your laptop, you're really heavy, it's burdensome, you can't take on transit. Imagine the entire world in the palm of your hand, your emails, your texts, and all that kind of phone and photos. And here's how we're going to get there. And they did that, and it's an amazing way to actually create story arcs. So moving forward from today, keep working on your stories, build a list of questions to review. If you want to book my deep dive workshop and my fall coaching sessions, I'd love that. You can also join the Facebook group afterwards, but I'm also here for Q&A. But what I really want to make the point is that you got to keep engaging in your journey. Every time I do talks or I do workshops or work with people, it's amazing the percent of people that drop. You sign up for a gym membership, how many people drop? I used to teach a course on GMAT. And I taught thousands of students, and they spent $1,500 to be part of this workshop, but part of that course for 7 weeks. Guess what percentage of people dropped from the course and never even wrote the GMAT? 70%. Like less than 30% of people would actually write the GMAT and do the work. Why? Because work is hard, I guess, but it's amazing like how that happens. You have to do the work, right? Branding takes work. Storytelling takes work. Building your startup takes work. We all get this. I encourage you to keep engaging on building stories. And I'm telling you right now, I can go on and on about how amazing LinkedIn is and storytelling is, but I'm telling you right now, it's a huge opportunity for you to leverage LinkedIn stories and build some engagement around your brands and your startups. If you have feedback for the content of what I've shared, I'd love to hear it. Tell the organizers what you thought. I'd love to know what that is. Some final thoughts before we get to Q&A. Again, the most important thing when it comes to storytelling is to make people feel involved, make people feel empowered, make people feel engaged. And again, a great storyteller carves images, feelings, and words on your heart and soul. And if you can do that, that's when your storytelling really goes to that next level. And then finally, you don't have to be great to start, but you have to start to be great. If you want to become a great storyteller, you want to build diversity inclusion, if you want to build a thought leadership brand for yourself, you have to do the work, but you have to start, right? You have to start and then keep going. All right, so that's the main part of my presentation. I want to leave time for Q&A. If people have questions, you can follow me on LinkedIn, my 2 LinkedIn pages, profile and company page, Twitter, my Facebook biz page. There's all my contact information below. As well, I mentioned again my storytelling bootcamp. Just for you guys today, I'm offering a pretty good opportunity. 2 hours of deep diving workshop plus the Facebook group lifetime access. I'm also going to give you 2 special coaching sessions for an hour each to help. And if you're interested in that and you sign up by end of today at bit.ly/storytellingbobby, I'll add those 2 live calls. All right. So thanks so much for joining me today. I really appreciate it, and I look forward to hearing some questions. So let me see. How do we can go back to the so I'm here for questions. All right. Thank you very much, everybody. Excellent. Are there questions? I'll wait for the organizers to give me some info on this one in case there are questions or not. All right, any questions? If there are any questions, I'm happy to answer any. Oh, wait, hold on. Oops. Okay. Okay. Oh, I see some questions. Okay, here we go. Yes, I'm trying to see the questions. Great. Hi, Dana. Questions. Can you help me with the question? What are the questions? I
Yeah,
can't see them.
sure. So our first question is from Shakira Ali, who wants to know, what is thought leadership? What does that mean?
Yeah, so thought leadership essentially is, so imagine, there's a great quote. Personal branding is what they say when you're not in the room. So your personal brand is your reputation, right? What they say about you, how people perceive you. A thought leadership brand is what they say when you enter the room. So building thought leadership means that you've established yourself as an authority in your field, someone who's driving conversations, someone who is becoming well known for their expertise in what they do. So every one of you, whatever you're working on, you have an opportunity to become a thought leader in your field in certain areas. So for myself, for example, I'm building thought leadership around personal branding, storytelling, relationship building, right, and public speaking. Those are things that I'm known for, and people reach out to me for. So that's what thought leadership is, and that's why it's so important for you to be able to do that. Any other questions?
Sorry, I was muted.
No worries.
All right, we do have another question here. Is it important to have an updated elevator pitch? How do you integrate the sizzle to an elevator pitch to captivate people quickly?
Well, the truth is, an elevator pitch is pretty short, right? So, I mean, you don't have that much time to make it an incredibly compelling story. I mean, an elevator pitch is really more about providing value in 30 seconds to a minute. But elevator pitches are important because when you work on your brand and you kind of know who your audience is, what value you provide, and you also know what your superpowers are, you can quickly put together, a pitch that says who you are, who you serve, and what kind of value you provide. And it should be like 30 seconds to a minute, but that's really all. That's really all it is.
I think also, I just real quick might add on to that, that in your elevator pitch specifically, you want to be compelling by being direct, right? You don't want to use the fluff words because you only get
Sure.
that short period of time.
Agreed.
Okay, so we do have another question here from Rhonda Dervin. Where do you get the material for your stories?
Oh, everywhere. I mean, the truth is that, having spoken to thousands of people around the world, people ask me questions all the time. So I've tracked those. I'll share things, I'll keep things on my phone, and I'll actually, I'll observe something. I'll be at a coffee shop and I'll observe something. Stories are everywhere. In a work meeting, you may say, well, you know what? I wish he wouldn't be on his phone. That's a story. You look at anything that you're working on. Like, if let's take a look at it. Like, if you have a startup, right, and you have a business, what are some of the biggest challenges you've had with your business? What are some of the questions that people ask you when you do sales calls? Every single one of those things is a story, and you could turn it into an amazing story for yourself. So I think that's an important key to remember, right? Stories are everywhere. It's just a question of how to actually find them and keep track of them. And if you do a good job of that, you'll find stories in every single interaction you have with somebody.
Awesome. We have another one here, and we have about 2 minutes left too.
Yeah,
So,
sure.
Christopher Newlands, for the boot camp, can my co-founder and I both attend to get our organizational story right?
That's a nice little tricky question there. Well, again, the boot camp is set up for individuals, right? So, I would say that you can certainly use the honor system, and I would recommend you do both. You register for it, but again, only one of you can be on the video call. Only one of you can be in the Facebook, the exclusive group to ask questions as you go through your journey. But you got to be honest about that. I'm a startup too, right? So I totally get that, but it's a good question. Appreciate that.
Awesome. We have 1 minute left. If there are any last questions.
Well, I will say while people are waiting, make sure you put questions on LinkedIn, okay? And use stories, put text-based posts, make videos. Like, seriously, do that. That's so important. And if you have questions about it, just contact me anytime. Even or just what you do is go to my LinkedIn post that I share and just comment and ask the question there, and I'll give you some answers. Like, it's so amazing.
Awesome. Well, I think that's it for everything today, Bobby. Thank you so much for spending time with us and sharing your take on storytelling, your story about stories. I also love the your brain on stories concept. That's one of my favorite.
Awesome. Thanks, Dan. Appreciate it.